What a chaotic world we live in. Our beautiful cities have been turned into fire and blood. What haven't they done to our culture, our great and ancient culture?
In the 1980s, two independent documentary film crews began covering the war in Afghanistan. One crew would survive, the other would not.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Hi, my name's Lee Shapiro. I'm the director of the upcoming movie Against the Empire that you'll be seeing in your movie theaters. We plan to enter into the country of Afghanistan, film it in Super 16 so that it can be blown up to 35 millimeter and shown in movie theaters across the United States. But we hope to get very spectacular footage of fighting, people trying to survive the Holocaust that's going on there.
One crew was focused on the Afghan people fighting the superpower Soviet Union.
They wanted to show the difference and,
the other was making a documentary on refugees around the world.
We were making a documentary
the two film
on
projects
refugees
would finally become
around the world, people running for their lives. We were put on a UN helicopter for south into Pakistan, from there into Afghanistan with the local warriors, Mujahideen. It was our first experience there, but what we saw altered our whole approach to making that film in the next 20 years of our lives. As the Soviet war led to civil war, the rise of the Taliban and al-Qaeda.
I was astonished and shocked why such a thing should happen. And of course the first tower, which I saw the glimpses from the TV and I was saying which was hit, we thought it just could have been a minor accident. But looking into the second plane crashing into the tower, my belief was that's a confirmed act of a terror and was directed to hit the tower and kill innocent life and disrupt the economy and the life of thousands of people. And disrupt the economy and the life of thousands of people.
The targets of U.S. bombs and missiles were the 50,000 fighters loyal to the Taliban and al-Qaeda in retaliation for the attacks of 9/11.
There's too much irony here. There's too much coincidence. If someone had told me 15 years ago you'd be back here in Afghanistan and now you're going to be filming the U.S. bombardment of Afghanistan, I would have laughed.
The Khyber Pass is the legendary gateway into Afghanistan. Any journalist covering this remote part of the world needs special assistance. Whether covering the war or contacting the people, Wakil Akbarzai was the best person for the job.
When I was with him, even at times when I was not with him, I found him, he was the mother hen. He was always making sure everything was safe. Now, safe is a very funny word for an Afghan. I don't think the word safe exists in Afghanistan.
What I think of Wakil, he's a very respectable man. He's a very honorable man. He has done nothing but good deeds for everybody. When I used to go out on drives with him, I remember you would see a widow or a homeless child or something, he would pull over the car, help them out, give them some money or something. And I always used to ask him, why do you do that? He used to say, when you give from one hand, God will give you from another. And that's what he taught. He taught me that. He's a very strong man, and I look up to him.
You studying? What are you studying?
No, yes.
What's wrong with that child?
She has a chest problem. She says coughing.
Wars are always waged with little regard for civilians. After World War II came the Cold War. That set in motion a struggle for control of the land and people of Afghanistan, which continues to this day. The first American president to visit Afghanistan was Dwight Eisenhower. Greeted by King Zahir Shah, they drove from the airport to the capital city of Kabul down the same route taken by Alexander the Great. I'd call the Afghans the most determined lot he had ever encountered, having defeated the British Empire in 2 wars. Throughout the Cold War, Afghanistan tried to remain neutral while accepting aid from both sides. Neutrality was difficult with the Soviet Union as their nearest neighbor. The king had promised a new democracy for the country, even in the face of pressure from Afghan communists to align with the Soviet bloc, which had designs on the land and its resources.
We had a democracy in Afghanistan. We had 10 years of the best time Afghanistan ever saw in the 20th century. That constitution, that was an Islamic constitution. It was made under Islamic law. Under that law, men and women had equal rights in education, in work, in political participation, and above all, in 1964, we had equal pay for the same work, where in France, women were struggling for it.
In 1973, the king was overthrown by Daoud Khan, aided by the Afghan Communist Party. The monarchy was abolished and the Republic of Afghanistan was proclaimed. By 1978, Daoud had lost favor with Premier Brezhnev and was assassinated by forces in his own country allied with the Soviets. Taraki became president and signed a treaty with Moscow guaranteeing friendship and cooperation, a document which also provided the excuse for the Soviet invasion the following year, in December.
As fighting broke out between the grassroots Afghan resistance and the Soviet military, the U.S. government seized the opportunity and covertly sent guns and money to the Afghan rebels.
The Russians have wanted a warm water seaport since the days of Kipling, when the struggle to control this region was called the Great Game. The foremost military mind in Afghanistan was Ahmed Shah Masud, who harassed the Soviets relentlessly from his base in the Panjshir Valley.
In every corner of Afghanistan you visit, you will see thousands of villages which have been destroyed by the Russians. Every day you will see the destruction of crops, livestock, and the massacre of civilians. Soviet strategy seems to be to drive the population into the cities where they are under close control, or to empty the country of its inhabitants and force them to seek asylum abroad. In my opinion, the Russians have started waging war against the civilian population and not just against the Mujahideen.
When you're on the ground with the people, you can't see who's really making the moves on the chessboard. All you can see is the human cost of war.
Kill the leaders and you can seize the country. Kill the people and the land's resources can be yours. Kill the story and the truth can be hidden from view.
Our land is a land of death. In that beautiful land, in those high mountains, instead of songs of happiness and lively melodies, that sounds its voice.
By 1986, 5 million Afghans had fled the war to seek asylum in other countries, especially Pakistan and Iran.
I was a research scholar doing my technology transfer in management studies. And when I heard that the Soviet invaded Afghanistan, I did not have much more creativity and innovativeness to finish my PhD program and join the resistance. During that time, between 85 and 86, I was involved in the refugee relief operations.
Wakil's job was to take journalists like ourselves, people who knew nothing of the people, the culture, or the war, take us out into the field, show us the situation, show us the people, show us what they had been through. He would take us to places where we would meet and have tea, and they literally roll out the Afghan carpet for us. And we felt welcomed by these people.
They have to get rid of all their personal belongings and possessions. Sometimes it happens they have to sell their jewelries and their little they have in their possessions. Like this woman, if I wouldn't have given her any help and assistance, like to feed her children, she has to sell her jewelries, the thing on her head and rings on her finger. And most of the time in these shops here in Pakistan, where you see these Afghan jewelries and antiques, they're all belong to the unregistered refugees who initially came and nobody took care of them.
Was she a wealthy woman before?
Yes, it looks like, because silver and golds, these things are obviously expensive. And if she can possess that, means they had a better life. And basically these people were landowners in Bauman province, and now she's helpless, still unregistered and looking for aid and assistance. The Soviets have invaded our country and brutally slaughtered the people, and people felt unsafe and left home. It was not that we were starving and dying because of food or economic aid or those sorts, but actually we are dying because we don't have our own freedom.
By 1986, the war with the Soviets had been going on for 7 years. The television networks had come and gone. But there were some journalists that just kept hanging in there, who knew that this was a really important story. People like Steve Olson, Sandy Gall, Kurt Lobeck, Andy Skrzej-Pokowiak, Jan Goodwin, and there was Lee Shapiro.
He was an idealistic American that wanted to solve problems, wanted to accomplish things, especially for the underdog.
He was very goal-oriented. He will try to do his best to overcome any obstacle once he set his mind in doing something.
He taught me how to do sound. That's how I started to work with him. We want to document the atrocities that actually we hear done by the Soviets.
Okay, come here, come here. Okay, stand there. Okay, do you have everything in the shot? Over there.
To complete his crew, Lee added Jim Lindelof, who had worked as a paramedic in Afghanistan the year before.
And he would go the extra mile for whatever, the person working with him. It happened with me as a friend, the kind of friendship that you develop once in a lifetime.
Make 2 trips, 1 trip in the wintertime, and then the second trip we'll make in the summertime and film with Masud, charismatic leader in the Panjshir Valley. We hope to get very spectacular footage of fighting people trying to survive the Holocaust that's going on there, letting the world know about the situation there, that they need help.
I realize I'm going to have to be doggedly strong to make this trip. I begin to get frightened, but at the end say to myself, I'm going to do everything I can to survive. Because I want to know what the hell is going on.
We were very close to death. But I guess when you are so close to the situation, you don't realize the risk that you're taking.
I prayed that night. I didn't want to be motivated by either fear or pride, but motivated by the right purpose.
While Lee covered the war, Carmen worked with the refugees.
At that time, I was working, as a doctor in the refugee camps. And I remember my first reaction was actually of anger. I could recognize how much damage the Soviets were doing to the Afghans. Men will have a lot of difficulty filming the Afghan women. There was always the people that Lee was pulled toward, the Afghan people, and the war became secondary in his mind.
I filmed the school children who have dressed up. We go to an open field, setting kids up by grades who recite some military poems.
The sigh of innocent human beings has created the storms. The sigh of innocent human beings has created the storms. Revolution is going on. Revolution is going on. Blood is boiling, heads are breaking. Blood is boiling, heads are breaking.
The country is invaded by Soviets. Red atheists are here. There is a war in the country. There is a war in the country.
Мы We're here in Afghanistan so people can live a quiet and peaceful life, so they can understand their own revolution. We don't occupy anything, we aren't doing anything new, and we don't interfere in internal politics. It's because the guerrillas are mostly illiterate. They're deceived by religion. They do it for the money, but we're doing our international duty.
In one occasion, like the Soviets entered the village, have robbed the people, looted the whole village, and even took some of the people out in front of the rest of the villagers and blew them up by the tanks, and where the bodies, pieces of their bodies were hanging in the trees and the nearby walls, just to demoralize the rest of the villagers, that never to encourage any mujahideen to visit their village. In some cases, they have taken the children, 5-6 months old babies, and brutally slaughtered them in front of their parents, and telling them, this is the first punishment we gave you, and second time, if you continue to support the freedom fighters and resistant people, we kill you also.
When they took my father, soldiers came in the middle of the night, knocked on the door and said, we'd like to speak to you for about 5 minutes. They put myself, my grandmother, and my father in the truck. And my mother said, if you're gonna take my husband, might as well take me. And so they let go of me and my grandmother, and they took my father and my mother.
The communist rulers in the country put hundreds and thousands of people in jail. They took even Abdullah's parents, both of his parents, father and mother.
What do you think happened?
Don't know. We hope, we pray that one day they would come back, but it has been 26 years.
People who lived and passed Pulcherki jail at night, they used to hear screams of torture and shootouts of killing people. It was a known fact.
Invaders.
It was a notorious place.
We don't want to remain as refugees.
Jihad means a striving
are never
to
hopeless,
overcome the evil in
though
oneself,
Soviet Union
but also
as
to
brutally
overcome the
invaded
evil in
our
others.
home, we have not given up.
In
We
the
continued
80s,
for the last 6 years
Jihad
or
meant
more,
struggle against
and we will
the
do
Soviet
so
invaders.
till we succeed. And we have a believe in fate, a clear the way we struggle of the free word and freedom in the jihad we carry on, even to the degree that we can free our home from the invaders living. To fight, we don't want to remain we are liberated.
A bus had pulled up filled with refugees.
Are never hopeless, though Soviet Union as brutally invaded our home, we have not given up. We continued for the last 6 years or more, and we will do so till we succeed.
You never know where they are.
And
you
we
never
have
know
a
where they're
believe in fate. The way we struggle
with it
in the jihad we carry on, even if we die, it's a dignified way of living.
A landmine doesn't just target soldiers. You never know where they are. You never know where they're buried. You never know who's going to come in contact with one, or when, or how.
If they stop on mine, you know, in the countryside, they drop a lot of mines. These butterflies and booby trap and all these things. So it's all happened because of that. So he lost his leg. Yeah, toys for the kids and some different booby traps and all these things. Sometimes you don't know because the countryside is all green and bushy and things like that. You don't know and suddenly you step on it. And there are lots of children you see, their hands are blown up. Today, if you go all around Afghanistan and here in the refugee camps, the number of the innocent children that their hands and legs have been blown off, you can't see it in any other war in the world.
An estimated 7 million landmines were left in Afghanistan by Soviet forces, who failed to map their locations.
So many children had lost their limbs from landmines and toy bombs dropped by the Soviets. The Afghans decided to fight back with an idea. They developed a game for their children. Holding one leg behind you, you struggle to overcome your opponents. Even a maimed Afghan, one missing an arm or a leg, could fight the invaders. Afghanistan has always had a reputation of hospitality. And it's hard for people to get a handle on this because its individualism is very ferocious.
Afghans have been playing bushkazi, a fierce game of competition since the Middle Ages. The object of the game is to retrieve a dead goat or calf from the ground while on horseback and carry it across the field, then back to the starting circle. The riders and horses are specially trained. There are no teams, and there are no rules. This game is the last event that leads to fun
That game, to him, portrayed what the Afghans were able to do. Only people, I guess, with that kind of courage will be able to regain their country.
Each horseman rides for himself, his family, or his tribe. These people prize their individualism above all things, yet they can join together on the playing field or the battlefield as a nation of tribal peoples working together.
The rally of the 7 Mujahideen parties was held in Peshawar, Pakistan, and the speakers were all the 7 party leaders.
They were united in one resolve, to refuse any truce with the Soviets unless they pulled out of Afghanistan completely. The National Islamic Front was one of the moderate parties, and there were a number of very fundamentalist parties in attendance.
These are the people that got most of the Saudi supplies and most of the Saudi arms, and they're also the same people that got most of the arms that the U.S. was putting through Pakistan, because Pakistan made the decision. They felt more comfortable going with such groups as Hizb Islami. Govardhan Hekmatyar received at least 50% of all of the funding that came into Afghanistan from the West.
He was a warlord and a drug lord. and supported by Pakistan's secret police, who scorned the moderates, especially Commander Masud, who refused to attend this rally. Lee became determined to film him, whatever the cost.
He really wanted to film Masud. He felt that Masud was really a hero for Afghanistan.
Wake up at 10:10. Felt Carmen praying, and I pray as well for the trip. My spirits are lifted by the thought that there's a lot of good material to film. Horses, ammunition laid out ready to load on the horses by ropes. Caught good scenes for movies. Time means nothing here. If I can learn to improve myself improve my perceptions and intuition. Need to pray for intuition to keep focus on the mission. Snow came, and we walked around. It's nice to think that the MiGs can't spot us. I feel I'm going to have to use my time more
The war in Afghanistan was
productively.
extremely difficult for
Why not
any
write a
journalist to
poem
cover.
or a
You had to
story,
walk in, and you had to walk out, and everything
I
you
have
needed had to
poetry
be
inside
carried
of
on
me,
your
I know
back. Some of the
But I
most
must get it
forbidding terrain on the face of the earth. In addition, Lee's plan was bold. First, he would trek north with Hekmatyar's fundamentalist fighters, and then switch over to moderate Jamiat forces who would take them to Masud. But traveling that first leg with Hekmatyar was a
Lee
mistake.
went in first.
The years
He
would
went
prove that this
in with one of
warlord
the
was no
moderate
friend
groups.
of the West.
However,
and in fact,
on
would
his
be
next trip
implicated in the
in, he
murders of
did
many
decide at the
journalists.
last minute to go in with.
They knew the town of Jares was full of spies, KGB spies. They had to stop to get ammunition in this town. Actually, the Mujahideen didn't agree that Lee should film in the town because it was really a very dangerous place. But he was insistent. Finally, they agreed he was going to do it very fast. And you can see it in the nervousness of everybody, trying to go really fast to the town and protecting him. He was going so fast, he didn't even take time to clean the dirt out of the camera gate. You can see it.
According to the information we got, 2 American photojournalists, Lee Shapiro and James Lindelof, were slain during an ambush by government forces inside Afghanistan, where the 2, that is, Lee Shapiro and James Lindelof, were filming a documentary about the struggle of the Mujahideen resistance against Soviet occupation.
I do have a statement from Aziz Sadat. Mr. Sadat has acted as an assistant, an interpreter, and a guide to Mr. Shapiro. All America should be proud that we have heroes like Lee Shapiro and Jim Lindelof who are willing to risk their lives in war-torn Afghanistan in order to bring news to the free world about what's really going on there. If it is true that they have sacrificed their lives in their efforts for freedom and to awaken the American people, then we are hoping to recover all of the film and finish the documentary.
Well, Lee was certainly aware that what he was doing was dangerous. As you've probably already heard, the Soviet ambassador to Pakistan was quoted in Helsinki Watch. I warn you, and through you all of your journalist colleagues, stop trying to penetrate Afghanistan with the so-called Mujahideen. From now on, the bandits and the so-called journalists, French, American, British, and others, will be killed, and our units in Afghanistan will help the Afghan forces to do so.
We just got word of the murder of Lee Shapiro.
I'm writing you this because I feel that anything could go wrong on this trip. I'm doing my best to deal with the demands of the film and of our safety. But an accident could occur, and I'm aware of it.
Nowhere in this world will people listen to the cry of the people of Afghanistan. I speak for the broken-hearted. I speak for the tears of orphans. I speak for the widows dressed in mourning. I speak for the bleeding hearts of mothers who have lost their children, and also for those who have seen their children die before their eyes. Till when will we conceal this burning story? I am burning, burning to tell this story.
Here in Jalalabad, where I grew up, there used to be a community center with schools and education. But unfortunately now, all you see is destruction and no life prevailing.
The thing which hurts me the most, I remember my teenage life. This was our playground. What I see here now, scraps, guns, tanks. Can't believe it. It was such a beautiful part of Afghanistan with lots of flowers, fruits, and greenery, enough water, and pretty life. It was a place for a shelter, for safety, for joy. We used to play, go out, stay late at night, and go work in the field.
Plenty of fruits and vegetables, gardens, water,
flowers, water.
And there was no single piece of land which
And there
was
was
not
no single
cultivated.
piece of land which was not utilized.
Greenery all around and full of life and fun.
Greenery around, life full of fun. As a teenager, I used to come here with my friends, and this hot summer days we used to start swimming from here all the way to the bridge. What a life, what a country, and I don't know where we're heading to.
And this is how and where the Taliban began, amid the desperation of the refugee camps in Pakistan, where scarred orphans were taught by the only family they now had. Extremist clerics, supported by the secret police of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, who were determined to create a movement that would someday establish a radical Islamic state in Afghanistan.
I sincerely believe that those young people that instead of going to colleges, to schools, they had rifles on their shoulder, they were just misled children. It's so easy that the child who was born and brought up in the middle of the worst war possible would be misled. I'm sure that they thought that they were doing something noble. I'm absolutely sure that those young men, had they been under a proper government and had, for example, we say that now the jihad is to clear minds, they would have risked their lives to do exactly that.
Читаю письмо, и сквозь годы отчет
отчетливо слышу те слова, что сказал перед боем отец. Дорогая моя, на переднем у нас передышка. Спят в окопах друзья, тишина на крутом берегу. Дорогая моя, поцелуй ты покрепче сынишку. Знать, что вас от беды, и я всегда сберегу. Дорогая моя, поцелуй ты покрепче.
The last Soviet troops withdrew in March 1989. For Masud's small but fierce army, the Russian retreat was cause for celebration, even though they knew that a ruthless, Soviet-supported regime was still in power in Kabul.
The presence of foreigners in our war is so unnecessary. We have a country of warriors. We don't need warriors to come and they will be trouble for us and they will be trouble for the world.
We were 10 miles south of Jalalabad, and there was a truck. There was something about how the truck was buried in the earth. It seemed really dramatic. It was a good place to set up the camera and frame the road.
The truck was buried in the earth. It seemed really dramatic. It was a good
What we didn't know was that one of the pickup trucks coming was filled with Arabs. They called themselves Arab Afghans. They were carrying their wounded, and they were angry. We had no idea that these people really wanted to shoot us, as opposed to letting us film them. And it took a lot of quick talk from our escorts to convince them otherwise.
It took a lot of quick talk from our escorts to convince them otherwise. We left. We dropped them cold. And there were those guys in that pickup truck that day saying, well, I guess we've got a country.
When the United States dropped all support of Afghanistan, the Saudis were there to pick up the slack. They were buying the country while America turned its attention to Iraq and the first Gulf War, leaving the Afghan people struggling to survive.
It's not just United States. If it is a powerful person, if it is a powerful government, they like to feel things are easy. They like to see things are instant coffee, instant juice, and lots of instant. I believe that most of the miseries today we see in Afghanistan is because of that instant politics.
Yesterday, no one would have believed that we would be able to return to our homeland. But today, they opened the border gates in Khyber for the first time since the war. You can see all the trucks with tens of thousands of people returning home to an uncertain future. Nothing is in functioning order in the country.
The refugees had no idea they would be returning to yet another war in their homeland, a civil war.
This was my home. It's still my home. I kept on resisting and fighting for it for the last 14 years and wanted to be back. That's my home. This is as far as I can go to my own place where I was born because of the mines. And what I look into my land, it's all arid. We could not work on the field because of the war. And today we are here, still with fear of mines.
I remember, you know, the whole family, his nephews were there, and I was there. And for me, it was wild because I had never seen Jalalabad. They fought with rocks, they fought with sticks. They took the tanks from the Russians, they took the weapons from the Russians and fought back.
As I pray for the soul of my ancestors, I'm a God-fearing person. Like now, when the war is gone, I don't believe anymore jihad in Afghanistan. Anybody who continues to fight, I don't think they will have any respect in the society any further to be encouraging war.
We fought Soviet Union, we fought an ideology, but our heads were up, and it was a just cause. We were not ashamed of it. We didn't become insane. We never acted with terrorism. But when the civil war started, the whole country went totally crazy.
Hekmatyar, the leader of Hizb-i-Islami, refused to stop fighting. He was never interested in the country becoming democratic. Even after the Soviets left, his forces were the ones that basically destroyed Kabul.
National Islamic Front did not join any side of the war. They're against the belief of war will solve the problem, such as they stand on the part of a lot of intellectuals, a lot of educated Afghans. They don't see war to be the solution for Afghanistan. Continued civil war in Afghanistan gave a room for unwanted elements from other countries, such as Saudi Arabia. Osama hails from that country.
What was Taliban, what they were doing, I think it was the result of a very bad situation in Afghanistan, which was the evil of civil war.
The whole nation was, in a way, taken over by Osama and his supporters. And he used to sponsor commanders and its operation, especially the Taliban era was looked after by Osama bin Laden.
In 1998, Dr. Carmen Zuniga decided to return to Afghanistan. Now married with a child and a medical practice in New York City, she was still haunted by the loss of her dead colleague and their unfinished film.
He was so close to me, like he was my own family. So I tried to see it in perspective. I mean, that Ali did the sacrifice for a reason.
Wakil had arranged for the crew to sneak across the Pakistani border into Afghanistan under the radar. They traveled in an armed caravan and headed for a rural area south of Kabul where they could investigate life under the Taliban government. The same area where the bodies of Lee and Jim were said to be buried.
Wakil, you remember that time when the guy who was driving us through the Khyber fell asleep behind the wheel? And we're driving off the road, bouncing. Yes. He's still asleep?
It was dangerous.
We stopped at a refugee camp along the way to the border. It was a camp that Carmen had worked in as a doctor while she had been waiting for Lee Shapiro to return. She wanted to see how the camp was doing 11 years later. In addition, it was good for us to be seen stopping at the refugee camp because that had been our cover that Wakil had arranged. We were ostensibly in the region to film in the refugee camps, not to cross the border into Afghanistan.
Junaida, she's suffering from stomach pain.
How old is the baby? That's 35 days old, only 1 month.
I know I went about 2 months ago to Afghanistan, to my village. It was quite happy. I loved my native country. Why not? Who not love their native country? But some of my relatives told me, you should go soon back to where you're living in Pakistan, because some Taliban will come and they will take you to the war.
And they will force us to fight.
I want to go home. If I have confidence on my native country to stay there safely.
According to their song, they say that one day we will repatriate to our homeland. One day we will go to Samarkand. In Samarkand, there are a lot of gardens. We love the flowers of Samarkand.
Someday they'll go home.
Yes, one day we will go home.
This river is a demarcation between Afghanistan and Pakistan into Paktia province and heading to Khost later on. We'll be visiting the first village close to Alisher. They should have been at the other end of the bridge, but they came on this way. Russian jets used to come and bombard the villages around here, and this was one of the entry point of Mujahideen into Paktia province. You go ahead. You might have noticed they don't like their pictures to be taken. They are hiding their faces sometimes, and we don't want to create any trouble.
So if they were to attack, we have enough guns to shoot back.
Yes, of course we can. We can defend ourselves and we can survive and go out, but we don't want to launch any major offensive. Yes, looks like it's totally ghost town, deserted.
We had crossed the Afghan border in Paktia province, come about 90 miles. These people are under the Taliban. Wakil was careful enough to say, well, here we are. God willing, everything will go well. And if it goes well, it's in accord with Afghan hospitality.
God willing.
These people had no idea that out of the blue, one day, 3 vehicles would show up with a few American journalists, an Afghan commander, and a Guatemalan doctor.
I've gotten to love it. I do.
These people invited us in, brought us tea, brought us food, and we talked for hours. They were like old friends. They revealed their lives, and we told our story.
There was a very pretty American girl married to one of my tribe men, a doctor, and he brought her to Afghanistan.
They were in jihad?
We have participated in jihad in Afghanistan, and we have contributed everything, and we are proud that we have done jihad, and we believe in that.
When he learned that you are American, he says, we have a friendship with America long time back, before the war.
What we didn't know at that moment in time could have killed us. Here we were sneaking across the border to learn more about the Taliban. While only a few miles away, Osama bin Laden was holding a press conference announcing his jihad against the West and his formal alliance with Egyptian radical Ayman al-Zawahiri. We had no idea that bin Laden was there.
Bin Laden was there.
You'll be taking any practical steps to materialize this jihad.
By God's grace, we have formed with many other Islamic groups and organizations in the Islamic world a front called the International Islamic Front to do jihad against the Crusaders and Jews. And by God's grace, the men reacted to this call, and they are going on this path, and they are doing a good job. By God's will, their actions are going to have a successful result in killing Americans and getting rid of them.
The meaning of jihad had just changed, but we were unaware of the danger. Following directions the village leader had given us, we drove further into Paktia province in search of a particular village.
In the journey back to Pakistan, they were passing through a lot of destroyed villages. And the translator told me that they did look for some place, kind of protected, to bury him. He did mention close to a destroyed village.
What you said.
Spiritually, I believe that Lee is still around, that he's very close. I can feel his presence sometimes.
After 2 hours, we passed to a town and flares go off on the road behind us. 10 minutes earlier and there would have been shooting. So now we have a very scary situation for the last several days since we left the abandoned village. Scary because if they know we're there, there's no way to escape.
Wherever you can see grass growing in the rubble, you know that somebody has been buried there. Myself being Christian Jew, he was a Jew. If we went through that kind of transformation, we were exposed to the Afghan people. They actually took it very serious. And we used to pray. I used to pray with the women. He used to pray with the men. And we would make comments. How serious they were about praying.
Nowhere in the Quran or in Islam does it say to go blow up people for the name of Allah. Allah says respect every religion. Everybody who believes in their own religion, you should give them their utmost respect.
According to the Quran, jihad must only be waged under the following conditions. No woman, child, or elderly person can be harmed. No soldier who is not brandishing a weapon can be killed. No standing buildings or structures can be destroyed. No tree with a single green leaf can be brought down.
Masud was in France, and he had tried to meet with the president of France because he had captured some of the Hezb Islami people working with bin Laden. That he has warned that a big thing was coming to the West, especially to New York.
All the propaganda that's causing us to disunite is worried General Musharraf is winning out, Mullah Omar is winning out, and Osama bin Laden is winning out. If I could say one thing to President Bush, it would be that if he doesn't take care of what's happening in Afghanistan, the problem will not only hurt the Afghan people, but the American people as well.
Only a few Afghan commanders, Rahim Wardak, Abdul Haq, and Ahmed Shah Masud, had the capability of stopping al-Qaeda and the Taliban from taking over Afghanistan completely. But they never got the support they needed. Instead, the CIA continued its association with Pakistan's secret police, who in turn supported the Taliban.
The picture that I have in mind for the future of Afghanistan is that Afghanistan would be a country independent, united, and together, and stay that way. And the regime of the country would be the kind that's a people's regime, democratically elected by the people. This has been my wish to provide the people the power to vote and elect their own government. I'll tell you what I think. Life goes by whether you're happy or not. Any man who looks back on his past and feels he has been of some use need have no regrets.
Nobody wanted to believe him, even the French government. So he knew, and of course they kill him with the group pretending to be journalists.
News of his assassination was on the front page of American newspapers on September 11th, 2001, even as the tragedy was compounded in an attack that came off like clockwork.
Before 9/11, most Americans did not know where Afghanistan was. After the attack, they still did not understand that Masud's murder was part of a coordinated plan. But the Afghans knew.
With close U.S. air support, Masud's Northern Alliance began a relentless march toward the capital city of Kabul to take back their country from the Taliban. They would not be stopped.
What does it say?
You see, this is the service of people of Afghanistan, is that all the people become together.
The arsenal of the Taliban was outdated. This surgical strike by American air power was so devastating and so precise that their weaponry was reduced to melted steel, while surrounding buildings were unharmed. All that was left undamaged was their flag.
Are those caves up there? Where? Maybe they hid here with the villagers so they'd be safe. Was anybody killed here?
In this house, it has been destroyed by the bombing, and here are several rooms that have been destroyed by the bombing. I think so 7 persons, they said that the villagers, the 7 persons, but the bomb hit that place.
America bombed here.
Yes.
Two weeks ago.
Yes.
Was Osama bin Laden or the Arabs here when they were? Like up in the cave?
He has just said about these caves belong to the borders, and that time that caves here, the airplanes came here, and that time there wasn't any Arabs or any other Taliban soldiers and etc.
You can see their caves. There is no camp for Osama bin Laden or their relatives or their soldiers.
Any journalist who'd crossed the border through the Khyber gathered at the Spingar Hotel in Jalalabad on their way to Kabul. A convoy of a dozen trucks filled with journalists decided to continue on to Kabul without an armed escort. This seemed unwise to me, and I stayed. They were rushing for the headline in the capital, where the Northern Alliance had just taken the city, and ignoring the story in Jalalabad.
Is everything going all right?
Who does he fight against?
He says just we come against the American, to fight against the American.
The Americans have bombarded in the last 2 months, but why was he fighting before that against the Americans?
The American brutalized the Muslims, therefore we fight against them.
Which Muslims did America brutalize?
Palestine and Afghanistan, the American are bombardment and they brutalize the people here, therefore we fight against against the Americans.
Does he fight for al-Qaeda?
Osama bin Laden ke liye kaam kar rahe hain? No, he says not for al-Qaeda, for Osama bin Laden.
He's from Karachi, right?
He's from Karachi.
Later that afternoon, we got word that the convoy of journalists heading for Kabul had been ambushed and a number of them taken from the trucks. No one knew if they were alive or dead. A couple of reporters jumped into a truck with me and headed back to the scene with a dozen anti-Taliban soldiers to protect us. Stopped every car along the road, but no one knew anything, or they chose not to say. Finally, one driver said he'd seen them lying on the side of the road, not moving. It was Ramadan, and our men had not eaten since daybreak. After sunset, our guys pulled into a truck stop about 5 miles from where the driver had seen the bodies. One of the other journalists who'd come along with me, who spoke Dari, became very concerned.
I mean, it is confirmed that bodies are still there.
nobody volunteers to go in that direction. Commander says that it will be tomorrow before they can leave for that place. So no way that they can stay, nor they can help.
So you don't think it's even safe to stay here?
This is what Commander says, that it is not safe to stay here. He wishes us to leave this place as soon as possible. Quicker the better.
I think so, yeah. Back in Jalalabad the next morning, 4 bodies were brought to the hospital morgue. The missing journalist had been beaten savagely and then executed with bullets to the head and the chest. Julio Fuentes, Harry Burton, Azizullah Haidari, Maria Grazia Cutuli.
If you speak to anyone, please spread it around so we get the largest
Spoke to the delegate there. He's been contacted by authorities in Kabul and Geneva.
Many of the journalists seemed ignorant of the region, the people, and the politics.
Jalalabad to be taken to Peshawar.
I never saw them reach out to the locals. They just hung out with each other in the hotel.
And they promised to send a runner to the hotel.
Some of them even tried to order beer and liquor in a Muslim city during Ramadan. Few bothered to dress in the local clothes or even to say please or thank you in the local language. This is not the way Lee Shapiro would have behaved. On the way to a place called Tora Bora, we hiked through a village that looked as though it hadn't changed since biblical times. I would learn later that there were at least 3,000 al-Qaeda in the area.
This mountainous place is called Torgar. It means that Black Mountain. This was made in the Russian time. It was the base of Mujahideen. He says there in that time it was before I've already said that it was the Mujahideen base, and now it is before it was used by the Taliban because he were here and there is no one al-Qaeda or Arab here. He says this thing.
That is, there are no Arabs here now?
Yeah, now there are no Arabs now.
But the guy down the road said there were Arabs.
Yeah, but they don't say that. They say there weren't, but I don't know what they don't say the factor like this.
Law pointed at the tent poles and said they were Arab, not Afghan. Whose dogs were these on the top of this mountain in the middle of nowhere? Who was feeding them? It became clear the Arabs had only slipped away when they saw us coming, probably to keep their hiding place secret as long as possible.
Was Arab over there?
Arab?
Did he ever see Osama bin Laden?
He has seen Osama bin Laden in Jalalabad, in Duranta, then he went to Kabul. He saw him in Kabul, then he went to Kandahar, then he haven't seen him.
Did he ever see any of their satellite phones, telephones, cell phones?
The data computer on the He didn't give it to bodyguard or anyone. No one was allowed to touch his phone. And he used to speak to Saudi Arabian, English to America, and different people. When he was there, many American people used to come, and they used to walk with him back and forth. He said we didn't know their language, and we couldn't ask them where they're from, but the translator who used to be with us, the foreigners, they said they are Americans.
November 29, 2001. At 2 a.m. in the morning, according to Wakil, commanders stationed in the Khyber Pass reported a strange event. 6 brand new SUVs, their lights off, approached the Torum Gate. The gate rose, and the SUVs silently crossed the border from Afghanistan to Pakistan to disappear from sight somewhere in the legendary pass. Nothing of this was reported in the American media until much later. But to the Afghans, it was hugely significant. Perhaps Mullah Omar, the al-Qaeda leadership, bin Laden himself, may have escaped that night.
Today, you come across in the street, if you tell them that you are from Afghanistan, they think that you are associated with him, but they don't realize that we have suffered because of that, their presence on our side. We have been hijacked too.
U.S. soldiers were welcomed at first by most Afghans, who believed that the promises made during the Soviet war would finally be kept, that Americans and Europeans would help them rebuild their country. Only time would tell.
Let's see.
Beneath their fun-loving exteriors, Afghan children carry the scars of war.
When the Taliban came to our village, my mother offered them bread and he threw away the food and did not trust us.
Behind the school, they found 12 people dead. And men had fled anyway, so women took care of the burying the dead and all that. But all the children saw what was happening. They were all men. They were all men. That's why most men had to run away, because they knew that they will beat women, they will beat children, but they will not kill them.
This is his father, who knew that it was a life-threatening for him, so he escaped home.
First, they put sort of chemical on the trees, and then they would burn the trees, the fruit-bearing trees. And he said that the biggest disaster was with walnut trees, that they were ancient, huge walnut trees, that it will take decades to be back to what it was. People are rebuilding their farms, and we are hopeful and we are looking forward to a new life.
The Taliban had forbidden dancing. The Taliban had forbidden singing, except for the call to prayer. And the Taliban had forbidden the use of cameras and recordings. None of this was born of Afghan culture.
It's a very emotional message, even when I talk about it. I have goosebumps. Never I hesitated about that one message that I have for the whole world. Please educate us. Please educate us, because whatever I see today, the misery in this country, and I mean it with all my heart, that it is because we are illiterate. We don't know. We don't know our right because we are not aware. Islam was the first religion which taught and prescribed women's rights. But there are times that because of the same politics, because of the same bad people, situation came that things were imposed upon women in the name of Islam. And again, I'm saying it because we are illiterate, because we don't know. We believe them. It is so easy to, in the name of Islam, to impose politics because they know that people will be shy or hesitant to challenge it. If you tell an illiterate woman that you are not allowed to go to bazaar because this is against Islam, she doesn't know. She doesn't know how to say that, well, if this is against Islam, how come? The wife of the Prophet was one of the best business person in the whole of Arabia, because they don't know. That's why ignorance, illiteracy is a plague that I beg every person on earth to help us to get rid of it. We compare everything to a nightmare, which was Taliban's era. That's why no matter what, it looks a little bit better from what we used to have during the Taliban.
And still the shyness is there. The tradition of the Taliban and the imposition of
they want peace, they want security, and they want Zaire Shah will come here and make a leisure get here.
In the summer of 2002, former King Zahir Shah returned to Afghanistan after 29 years in exile. He was accompanied by Hamid Karzai, the new interim president. Together they attended the Loya Jirga, Afghanistan's traditional Grand Council of Elders, in order to form a new government.
They erected this huge hall in a matter of 2 weeks, and around 2,000 people were daily seated and discuss the modality and the future structure of Afghanistan.
It was one step forward towards democracy. It was not a perfect situation. I knew that this would be a government which will be highly influenced by politics rather than cabinet of the experts, cabinet of those people who really are made and educated and trained. So that's why I'm not as heartbroken as most of the country is, because I didn't expect more than that.
Hamid Karzai hated the Taliban who had murdered his father in cold blood. He knew he would have to deal with extremist elements that remained in the population. And the drug lords who ran the largest opium trade in the world.
I'm a hopeful person. I thought that next year would be fine, and next year would be fine, and hope. A day has come, even it's a very chaotic situation, and I still believe in hope. A day will come that people in Afghanistan will live in peace and harmony, with love and affection with the rest of the world.
Afghanistan had become a nation in exile. Now, after 20 years, this Afghan writer finally came home.
The day my soul departs my flesh, make my shroud of flowers fresh. Wash me with the tears of love, and lay me with the rose above, so that nightingale may sing. If rain and wind should ruin my grave, none should try to repair it. Let my fragments be scattered abroad in whatever form they would have it, to be carried away by the air. Save for madmen none should come to visit my resting place. If a sober one should approach somehow, tell him to quick his pace, for the sane know nothing of love. The sane know nothing of love.
Everyone came to Afghanistan to ask for something. If the Americans came, we saw at the end, it was not democracy. They wanted just to win the Cold War. If it was the neighbors, it was not a neighborly help. They just wanted to have a stronger hand inside Afghanistan. But I couldn't understand that when people came and collected money in the name of Afghan children, and they also came and used this country so cowardly. They were digging the most sophisticated tunnels to live there, to be sheltered, and next door to them in the village, people were starving and dying of hunger. So as a Muslim, as an Afghan, this is my question from Ibn Laden and his Lord, that this is what you do to a Muslim country? That's what you do in the name of Islam? Are we so nothing? The Afghan nation is so nothing that we should be used by everyone? I mean, this breaks my heart.
In 2001, a shadow fell across the world. Now we live with fear of terrorism and fear of questioning the official story. For years, American media refused to investigate where government and corporate interests were taking us. Only the independent voices were raised.
Right after Osama bin Laden was killed, suicide bombers murdered Commander Masud's close ally and friend, former President Rabbani, who was in charge of peace negotiations with the Taliban. Once again, the connection between these momentous events was ignored by mainstream media.
Only time will tell if all your plans turn out that well. Only years can say if everything will go your way. Only dreams can find some meaning in the cracks of time, and only tears can go where rivers flow unseen. The price of youth demands the highest price it can amid the shifting sands of love and war. There are no guarantees, there is no certainty, only the road ahead and little more. Only love endures the ravages of time that love obscures. Only hearts can know the truth behind the picture show.